In 1526, the dusty plains of Panipat echoed with the sound of destiny. A young warrior from Central Asia, Babur, had just defeated the mighty Sultan of Delhi. Few could have imagined that this single battle would give birth to one of the greatest empires in history. The Mughal Empire. From the breathtaking Taj Mahal to grand palaces shimmering with gold, the Mughals ruled India with a mix of beauty, brilliance, and bloodshed. But like every great empire, their story was not just of power, it was also of ambition, betrayal, and inevitable fall. Let's journey through time to witness the rise and fall of the Mughal Empire. The birth of a dream, Babur's vision. Before India knew the Mughals, there was a man named Zahir-ud-Din Muhammad Babur, a descendant of both Timur and Genghis Khan. Born in the rugged lands of Fergana, modern-day Uzbekistan, Babur grew up dreaming of glory. But his early life was anything but easy. He was exiled, betrayed, and defeated more times than he could count. Yet, Babur was no ordinary man. His diary, the Baburnama, tells us of a warrior poet, a man who loved gardens, art, and beauty as much as he loved conquest. Driven by destiny, Babur crossed the snowy passes of the Hindu Kush with just 12,000 soldiers. Ahead of him lay India, a land of riches, chaos, and opportunity. In 1526, at the First Battle of Panipat, Babur faced the massive army of Ibrahim Lodi, the Sultan of Delhi. Lodi had 100,000 men and 1,000 war elephants. Babur had far fewer, but he had something India had never seen before: gunpowder and cannons. The battle was fierce. The ground shook with the thunder of cannons, smoke filled the sky, and chaos consumed the battlefield. By sunset, Lodi lay dead, and Babur stood victorious. The Mughal Empire was born, not just with swords, but with strategy, innovation, and vision. Babur's reign was short, but his dream was long. He laid the foundation for an empire that would soon dominate India for over 300 years. The foundation of power, Humayun's struggles. Babur's son, Humayun, inherited the empire, but not his father's fortune. The new emperor was kind-hearted, artistic, and generous, but perhaps too gentle for the ruthless world of kings. His reign began with challenges. The empire Babur left was young, fragile, and surrounded by enemies. Powerful rivals like Sher Shah Suri rose from within India itself, a brilliant Afghan leader with unmatched military skill. Sher Shah defeated Humayun and drove him out of India. For 15 long years, the Mughal heir wandered in exile, moving between Persia and Afghanistan, living as a refugee, yet never losing hope. In exile, Humayun found support from the Safavid Empire of Persia. With their help, he reclaimed Delhi in 1555, just a year before his tragic death. Legend says he slipped down the stairs of his library while rushing to evening prayers, a fall that ended his life, but not his dynasty. Humayun's story was one of loss and resilience. His greatest gift to history was not his conquests, but his son, Akbar, who would become one of the greatest rulers the world had ever seen. The rise of greatness, Akbar the visionary. When Akbar ascended the throne in 1556, he was just 13 years old. The empire was fragile, facing rebellions and chaos, but what began as a boy's struggle became the dawn of the Mughal Golden Age. Under Akbar, the Mughal Empire didn't just grow, it transformed. He was a warrior, yes, but also a thinker. He expanded the empire through strategy, diplomacy, and tolerance. Akbar understood that ruling India meant ruling over diversity: Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Rajputs, and more. So, instead of dividing his people, he united them. He abolished the jizya tax on non-Muslims, welcomed different faiths to his court, and even started a new religion, Din-i-Ilahi, or faith of the divine, seeking harmony between all beliefs. He married Rajput princesses, formed alliances with local kings, and encouraged arts and literature. The Mughal court under Akbar glittered with scholars, poets, and artists. He built Fatehpur Sikri, a magnificent city that stood as a symbol of his vision, unity through strength and culture. But Akbar was not without flaws. His ambition often led to brutal wars, and not all his reforms survived after his death. Yet his leadership built a solid foundation that allowed the Mughal Empire to reach unmatched glory in the generations to come. Pause. The boy who once faced rebellion and uncertainty had now become Akbar the Great, a ruler loved by millions and respected by foes. His reign was a golden chapter in India's history, one that would define the Mughal Empire for centuries. The golden age of love and power, Jahangir and Nur Jahan. Soft sitar music fades in, birds chirping, sound of royal court chatter. After the mighty Akbar, the throne passed to his son Jahangir, the name meaning conqueror of the world. But Jahangir's empire wasn't just about conquest, it was about art, love, and elegance. From the start, Jahangir showed a love for beauty, paintings, poetry, gardens, and the peaceful rhythm of nature. His court became a paradise of creativity, where artists from Persia, India, and Central Asia flourished. But Jahangir's reign is remembered for more than art. It's remembered for a woman who changed the face of the Mughal court, Nur Jahan, the light of the world. Born as Mehr-un-Nisa, she was the daughter of a Persian nobleman who had fled to India. Intelligent, graceful, and fiercely capable, she captured Jahangir's heart and his trust. When Jahangir fell ill or distracted by wine and opium, Nur Jahan ruled in his name. She signed royal decrees, minted coins bearing her name, and led political decisions with unmatched brilliance. For the first time in Mughal history, a woman shared the emperor's power, not from behind the curtain, but as his equal. Together, they formed one of history's most fascinating royal partnerships. Yet not all approved. Many nobles resented her influence, and rebellions rose. Jahangir spent years trying to keep his empire steady, but the cracks were showing. By the time of his death in 1627, the empire remained vast and strong, but the seeds of internal struggle had already been sown. Still, his reign left behind a legacy of art, architecture, and the unforgettable romance of two souls who ruled together, a golden love in an age of empires. The glory of art and architecture, Shah Jahan's reign. Sound of chisel on marble, echo of craftsmen humming. When Prince Khurram ascended the throne as Shah Jahan, the Mughal Empire entered its most glorious era. His name meant, King of the World, and indeed, under his reign, the empire reached the height of luxury, art, and power. Shah Jahan was a visionary. He wanted to make India the jewel of the world. He built majestic forts, beautiful palaces, and entire cities that reflected Mughal grandeur. But, among all his creations, one monument would forever define his reign, the Taj Mahal. The story of the Taj Mahal begins with love and loss. His beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal, died during childbirth in 1631. Heartbroken, Shah Jahan promised to build her a tomb that would make the world weep in awe. For 22 years, over 20,000 artisans worked tirelessly to bring his vision to life, a white marble masterpiece that seemed to float in the sky. Its symmetry, its precious stones, its perfect balance, all stood as a tribute to eternal love. But while the empire glittered on the outside, cracks were forming within. The cost of Endless wars and magnificent buildings drained the treasury. Behind the shining walls of the Taj Mahal, whispers of discontent grew louder. Shah Jahan's sons began to fight for power even before his death. The same splendor that made his reign shine would soon cast a long shadow over the future. Shah Jahan's empire had never looked stronger, but beneath the marble beauty, history was preparing for one of its darkest turns. The turning point, Aurangzeb's ambition. The year was 1658. The Mughal Empire stood tall, but inside the royal palace, a storm was brewing. Shah Jahan's 4 sons, Dara Shikoh, Aurangzeb, Murad, and Shuja, all wanted the throne. And in that storm of betrayal and blood, one name emerged, Aurangzeb Alamgir. Cunning, brilliant, and ruthless, Aurangzeb defeated his brothers one by one. His most tragic act was against Dara Shikoh, the eldest brother, a philosopher who dreamed of peace between Hindus and Muslims. Aurangzeb had him executed, declaring him a heretic. When Aurangzeb took the throne, he brought back the sword of orthodoxy. He ended many of Akbar's policies of tolerance, reimposed the jizya tax on non-Muslims, and tried to rule India strictly by Islamic law. Yet, despite his harshness, Aurangzeb was also a man of discipline. He lived simply, wore no jewels, and wrote the Quran by hand to earn his own income. Under his rule, the Mughal Empire expanded farther than ever, from Kashmir in the north to Tamil Nadu in the south. But expansion came at a price. The empire grew too vast to control. Constant wars against the Marathas, Rajputs, and Sikhs drained the treasury and broke the spirit of his soldiers. Aurangzeb's reign became one of endless campaigns, victories without peace, expansion without unity. When he died in 1707, he left behind the largest empire in Indian history, but also the weakest foundation. The people were divided, the treasury empty, and the spirit of tolerance long gone. The empire that once stood for unity under Akbar now trembled under its own weight. History would remember Aurangzeb as both a builder and a destroyer, the emperor who stretched the Mughal Empire to its greatest height, and yet began its inevitable fall. Cracks in the throne, rebellions and division. When Aurangzeb died in 1707, the Mughal Empire stretched across almost the entire Indian subcontinent. It was vast, wealthy, and feared, but it was also fragile. His death was not the end of a ruler, but the beginning of an unraveling. Without Aurangzeb's iron grip, chaos erupted. His sons and grandsons fought bitterly for the throne, each prince declaring himself emperor while provinces turned into independent kingdoms. The once mighty empire began to fracture. In the Deccan, the Marathas, led by the fierce spirit of Shivaji's legacy, rose in rebellion. Their guerrilla tactics outsmarted the Mughal armies, who were exhausted after decades of war. In Punjab, the Sikhs grew stronger under the guidance of Guru Gobind Singh and later Banda Singh Bahadur, building both spiritual and military strength. In Bengal, the Nawabs started acting independently, collecting taxes for themselves rather than the imperial treasury. Inside the palace walls, corruption replaced discipline. Governors who once served the emperor now built their own empires. Soldiers went unpaid, peasants revolted, and trade slowed. The Mughal throne, once a symbol of unity and power, had become a stage for endless conspiracies. Even nature seemed to turn against them. Famines and plagues struck. The population suffered while the court still sparkled with jewels. The empire's heart had stopped beating as one. What had once been a symphony of strength under Akbar now echoed as a chorus of disunity. The cracks were no longer invisible. The empire that once stood as the pride of India was breaking. Piece by piece, crown by crown. The empire under siege, foreign invasions. As the Mughal Empire weakened from within, enemies from outside saw opportunity. The vast wealth of India, its gold, jewels, and fertile lands, drew invaders like a flame draws moths. The first great blow came in 1739, when the Persian ruler Nadir Shah stormed into India. His army moved like a shadow, swift, merciless, unstoppable. At Karnal, he crushed the Mughal forces and entered Delhi unopposed. What followed was one of the darkest days in Mughal history. Delhi, once the jewel of the world, was bathed in blood. Thousands were massacred, the royal treasury looted, and the legendary peacock throne, encrusted with diamonds and emeralds, was carried away to Persia. The symbol of Mughal glory was gone. Barely 2 decades later, the Afghan warlord Ahmad Shah Durrani invaded repeatedly, plundering northern India and leaving destruction in his wake. Each invasion exposed the empire's weakness, its lack of unity, leadership, and will to fight. Meanwhile, the European powers, particularly the British and French, watched from their coastal trading posts. They came as merchants, but what they saw was an empire ready to be taken. As the Mughals struggled to defend their borders, the British East India Company expanded its control quietly, one treaty, one fort, one alliance at a time. By the mid-18th century, the Mughal emperors were emperors in name only. Their commands carried no power beyond the walls of Delhi. Governors ignored them, generals betrayed them, and foreign powers used them as pawns. The age of glory had turned into an age of survival. The British shadow, the beginning of the end. By the 1750s, the British East India Company had become more than a trading enterprise. It was a private army backed by the crown. With money, guns, and diplomacy, they began shaping India's destiny. In 1757, the Battle of Plassey changed everything. The British defeated the Nawab of Bengal with the help of betrayal from within, a victory that gave them control over India's richest province. From there, they spread like roots through weakened soil, controlling trade routes, influencing local rulers, and filling their coffers with Indian wealth. The Mughal emperor in Delhi, Shah Alam II, was reduced to a puppet. He watched as one province after another slipped from imperial hands. The once mighty Mughal army was now just a shadow, poorly paid and led by commanders more loyal to the British than the throne. In 1764, after the Battle of Buxar, the British formally gained the right to collect revenue in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa, turning the emperor into a symbolic figurehead, living on a British pension. The grandeur of the Mughal court still glittered. Poets recited verses, musicians played sitars, and courtiers wore silk. But outside the palace, the British flag rose higher with each passing year. India's destiny was changing hands, and the empire that had once ruled from Kabul to the Deccan was now ruled over by clerks and soldiers from a faraway island. The British didn't destroy the Mughal Empire in one battle, they slowly replaced it, piece by piece, until nothing was left but the memory of its greatness. The shadow of the crown had fallen. The sun that had once lit all of India under the Mughals was now setting, and darkness, draped in the Union Jack, was beginning to spread. The fall, Bahadur Shah Zafar, and the end of an era. By the middle of the 19th century, the Mughal Empire existed only in name. The British East India Company ruled the land, while the emperor sat behind fated walls in Delhi, a ruler without a kingdom. That emperor was Bahadur Shah Zafar, the last Mughal, a poet, philosopher, and dreamer. Unlike his ancestors, Zafar was no warrior. He loved art, music, and Urdu poetry. His verses, spoke of pain, loss, and longing, reflections of a man watching his empire die slowly before his eyes. But in 1857, the winds of rebellion swept across India. Discontented soldiers, Indian sepoys in the British Army, rose in revolt. They marched to Delhi, proclaiming Bahadur Shah Zafar as their emperor. For a brief, shining moment, the Mughal banner flew once again over the Red Fort. The streets of Delhi echoed with the cry, Zafar Zindabad. It seemed that history had turned back, that the old empire might rise once more. But destiny had other plans. The British responded with brutal force. After months of fierce fighting, Delhi fell. Thousands were killed, the city burned, and the Red Fort, once the seat of grandeur, became a prison. Bahadur Shah Zafar, frail and heartbroken, was captured. His sons were executed before his eyes. The Emperor of India was exiled to Rangoon, Burma, modern-day Myanmar, where he lived his last years in silence and sorrow. He died in 1862, buried in an unmarked grave, far from his beloved Delhi. His final words still echo through history. How unlucky is Zafar! For burial, even 2 yards of land were not to be had in the land of his beloved. And with his death, the Mughal Empire, the empire of Akbar, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb, finally ended. The British declared India under the direct rule of the British Crown, marking the dawn of the Raj. The age of emperors was over. But the legacy of their dreams was just beginning. The legacy lives on, lessons from the Mughals. Though the Mughal Empire fell, its spirit still breathes across India and beyond. Their art, their architecture, their culture, they shape the very identity of South Asia. Every time the sun touches the marble of the Taj Mahal, every time a poet writes in Urdu, every time a melody drifts through a sitar, the legacy of the Mughals whispers through time. The Mughals taught the world something profound, that true power lies not just in conquest, but in creation. They built bridges between faiths, blended Persian and Indian traditions, and gave rise to an age where diversity flourished under one banner. From the Red Fort of Delhi to the Shalimar Gardens of Kashmir, their fingerprints remain on stone, water, and sky, reminders that beauty and strength can coexist. But history also leaves a warning. The same empire that rose through unity fell through division, greed, and pride. The story of the Mughals is a story of greatness, and a lesson for all time. Soft swell of orchestral music. Empires may fall, kings may fade, but culture, art, and wisdom endure. And as long as the Taj Mahal glows under the moonlight, the Mughals will never truly be gone. The Mughal Empire reminds us that no matter how high a civilization climbs, it is humanity, compassion, unity, and vision that keeps it standing. So, if this story moved you, inspired you, or made you reflect on the power of history, subscribe to our channel, share this story with others, and turn on the bell, because the past still has stories to tell, and we'll uncover them together.